Want to know what the big trends are in e-commerce that you need to be taking advantage of? Then keep listening to this episode.
It's the e-commerce master plan podcast. Here to help you solve your marketing problems and grow your e-commerce business. Cutting through the hype to bring you inspiration and advice from the e-commerce sector and beyond. Here's your host, Chloe Thomas.
Hello and welcome. It's awesome to have you tuning in, and I hope peak has gone well, is going well. We are very nearly at the end of it. So today we've got something a little different for you. This is kind of some big picture chat around what's working in e-commerce. So a good one to kind of listen to and just let it kind of be absorbed and let it influence your plans for next year, because this is a definite must listen on that front. We are talking to someone investing millions in e-commerce businesses in the hope that they will grow massively. And we're talking to him about what's working in the industry right now, what he's seeing amongst the brands he works with, some really great takes on what it's going to take to be a super successful brand coming up in this episode. I really enjoyed talking to Raph. I think he's shared some really clear advice on what to do at that big picture level in your business, those big things that are going to go straight down on your strategy plan for next year. Please do make sure you listen to the end of the episode so you don't miss out on his top tips. They are really good this week, and also my own take on this episode. Getting an online business off the ground is not easy. So if you find yourself working late, tackling a to-do list that's a mile long with your fifth cup of coffee by your side, remember, great email doesn't have to be complicated. That's what Klaviyo is for. It's the email and SMS platform built to help e-commerce brands earn more money by creating genuine customer relationships. Once you set up a free Klaviyo account, you can start sending beautiful branded messages in minutes, thanks to drag and drop design templates and built-in guidance. And with e-commerce specific recommendations and insights, you can keep growing your business as you go. Get started with a free account at klaviyo.com/masterplan. That's KLAVIYO.com/masterplan. And now to introduce today's guest expert. Raphael Thiolon is an executive director at Verlinvest, a global private equity investment company with offices around the world. Raph leads the global Verlinvest Digital Consumer practice with investments in e-commerce stores, marketplaces, and digitally native brands. Past investments include Who Gives a Crap, Lazada, Chewy, and Purplle, which is an Indian beauty site. Hello, Raph.
Hi, Chloe. Thanks for having me today.
It's great to have you on. And, with all the huge, massive projects you're doing all around the world, thank you for spending the time to catch up with us all.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here.
Well, before we start picking your brains for some e-commerce genius advice, how did you end up in the world of e-commerce?
I started as a consumer, obviously, and I think that's quite relevant because, as you kind of hinted on at Verlinvest, we are, true consumers before being investors, right? And so my own experience with e-commerce, I guess, started when I was studying probably 20 years ago and buying books off Amazon when they launched their marketplace in France. And then I remember buying pairs of, Veja sneakers back to my parents' home when I was living in LA for them to bring them over, right? So I think very quickly as a consumer, I was quite amazed about the convenience and the power of e-commerce, when you knew what you wanted to buy, right? Professionally, though, I think it started when I joined Verlinvest around 10 years ago. I think, you said it, right? Verlinvest, we are a global growth equity firm, which is truly passionate about the consumer space. And what we try to do is to back entrepreneurs who like to change the world in some sort of form and offer better products, better experience, have a positive impact on the planet and the people, and who ultimately are driving consumer revolutions. And e-commerce is definitely a huge consumer revolution. But the story of Verlinvest in digital and e-commerce is probably the following, right? We have a background in food and beverage, which is a space that we know extremely well. And generally speaking, in the consumer space, I think we kind of pride ourselves in trying to spot consumer trends and shifting behaviors pretty early, right? And then, and as I said, back the teams that can make those changes really scalable and happen on a global basis. I think we did pretty well in beverage, in food, and other categories. I think if you look at our portfolio, we have companies like Oatly and oat milk, which is really driving the plant-based revolution. But what's fair to say that 10 years ago, we didn't really know tech so well because we are from the consumer space, and we probably missed a bit on the first wave of e-commerce players. And so, we sat down, did some homework, and I think so two big opportunities for us to kind of embark on. The first one was looking at parts of the world where we were present, but where e-commerce was a total white space, was just not existent. And I think here a good example of what we did is back Lazada, which was the first e-commerce platform in Southeast Asia. And I spent the last 7 years living in Singapore and covering the region, so I know quite a bit of it. And so what's really interesting is they were the first one to build end-to-end logistics infrastructure and really convert consumers there to buying online. And when you talk about a revolution, I think today e-commerce in Southeast Asia is worth over $100 billion. It was basically zero when we started 10 years ago. In countries like Indonesia, the penetration of e-commerce today is 25%, whereas in some European markets like France or Italy, we only half of that, right? So the first part was looking at horizontal platforms that can be a one-stop shop in spaces where consumers didn't have that kind of offering. The other part of the thesis that we identified was in more mature markets where customers were becoming more sophisticated. We talk about US, Europe. I think there was opportunity to offer a different experience than the Amazon of this world, right? And we saw a few platforms emerging that were usually built on the same recipe for success, and that were trying to really engage differently with consumers and get some real traction out of this, right? And examples of companies that we backed through that thesis are Chewy, which is the leading online pet retailer in the US, Zalando, the fashion retailer and marketplace in Europe, Purplle in India, I think you mentioned earlier, which is a beauty platform in India. And all of those, I think they were exhibiting features that are very close to our heart, which is really, relentless focus on building unique assortments, so developing their own brands or, generating exclusive partnerships with some brands that you can't find on other platforms. I think a lot of focus on building a superior and tailored customer service and user experience, which obviously is very hard for horizontal platforms like Amazon, where you sell almost everything to everyone. And the last thing is really around the product, right? Better user experience, browsability, more content, more community engagement, really features that help create a brand beyond the platform. And so, those are really the two parts of our investment thesis so far in e-commerce at Verlinvest.
I love that first one, looking at locations that haven't yet experienced e-commerce, because those of us living in these mature markets and working in them, we kind of forget that large parts of the world are barely scratching the surface with e-commerce. And of course, there's some huge opportunities if you can get it right in those marketplaces to learn all the lessons from the mature markets. So it must be a lot of fun working on those projects.
For us, it was a lot of fun. If you ask the management teams, they would probably say the same, but it was also a lot of pain, right? Because one thing that we realized, if you again take the example of Lazada, is last mile logistics was not existing, right? So they had to build their own complete end-to-end infrastructure and hire their own guys on their own bikes to deliver the parcels to the customers, right? So, but what's really interesting is they were first mover, and then they led to really a lot more mature space now, where the infrastructure is there for new entrepreneurs to take advantage of that and build a successful platform of tomorrow.
Yeah, it's almost creating an industry, not just creating a business at that level, isn't it?
100%.
We should probably focus in on the mature market stuff, though, because that's what the majority of our listeners are tuning in for. And you're in quite a unique position of being on the lookout for things you've got potential for growth, and then helping those businesses find their paths to growth. So let's kind of start with the obvious question here, Raph. What What do you think brands should be doing in mature markets to grow at the moment? Because I feel like it's changed a lot in the last couple of years.
That move from purely transactional platforms to something more, and which really are branded platforms and building on the same recipe for success than traditional offline brands is what we're seeing and what we're encouraging with some of our portfolio companies. It is on the transaction side or the pure search side, it is obviously extremely hard to compete with Amazon, and it's becoming harder every day, right? So you have to find a different angle. I think for brands, what's very important is, the ability to be present, to engage with your consumers, and ultimately be available for purchase throughout the customer journey and at everywhere where the customers are, right? So in the early days, there was some sort of split between digitally native brands and those traditional offline brands. I think that is irrelevant anymore. Like, everyone has to find their right mix through looking at omni-channel, but you have to be able to engage with different customers, both online and offline.
Yeah, it does seem like the days of the pure play are over. And we did a survey of our audience earlier this year, and it seems like the great majority are now at the bare minimum on at least 2 different sales channels, if not 3 or 4.
For a brand, you're absolutely right. Now, for a platform, it's obviously a bit different, and it's interesting to see how Amazon, who's doing so well online, still a bit struggling, if they allow me to say that, when it comes to running stores. We know it's very different. I think ultimately we also see some vertical e-commerce platforms trying to acquire existing offline chains or foray themselves. I think everyone will experiment, but when you're a brand, okay, and not a multi-brand retailer, the ability to be present everywhere across channels, your own channels, also some sort of wholesale, is extremely important. And also that boils down to brand visibility and driving the right acquisition metrics, right? We know for a fact through some of our portfolio companies that having offline presence, whether it's your own stores, whether it's presence in multi-brand concept, is usually driving customer acquisition cost lower in the catchment area, right? So there is real synergies there.
Yeah, it's often not looked at. People get so obsessed on channel by channel by channel that they forget the impact that all those different channels and all those different placements have together. Yeah, everyone listening, if you didn't quite catch that, which you should have done, you need an offline presence if you want to lower those acquisition costs. Now, something else I know that you're very interested in, and we're very interested here in the podcast, is this world of sustainability in the e-commerce space. And it is nothing if not a complex and confusing space, which arguably the current economic crisis feels like it might push it to a back burner. But I think it's something we've got to tackle in the e-commerce industry if we're going to survive long term, and because it's the right thing to do. Is this something you're seeing a lot of with the businesses you're working with?
Yeah, you're right, because as I said earlier, sustainability and the ability, to combine growth with a positive impact on the planet is something which is, at the core of what we do, and we are trying to back entrepreneurs with the true mission around that. If you look at one of our portfolio company, Who Gives a Crap, which is a really cool brand out of Australia, selling, eco-friendly toilet paper and other household goods online to their own website, in different parts of the world. I mean, their clear mission was to push, consumers away from virgin papers, where you have to cut, millions of trees every day to do toilet paper, and encourage them to go green, but without compromising on quality or the kind of brand that they're using, right? So sustainability is absolutely important, and it is going to be a big next topic in e-commerce, because I think we're getting more and more data points about the carbon footprint and the some of the issues that are generated through the unstoppable rise in e-commerce, right? And if you take a couple of examples, I think everyone will have to help the global e-commerce scene to find a way to reduce returns, for example, right? I mentioned Zalando in fashion. Sometimes returns are reaching 40 to 50% of total items, and that is not super sustainable from an environmental standpoint, but also, frankly, from a financial point of view, this is extremely costly, right? I think we're seeing rising consumer frustration and even backlash around the amount of packaging that is included in e-commerce parcels. We'll have to find ways to either bundle parcels from different retailers, or I think pickup points is a solution that will continue to grow. Again, with Who Gives a Crap, we're looking at developing our own branded delivery fleets and only EVs. I think that's another interesting solution. Obviously, it comes with challenges, but that definitely goes in the right direction. So we are looking at that, definitely in the sense of helping existing players just be better incrementally every day. I think another thesis that we are looking at are really dedicated platforms which are only selling, whether it's secondhand goods or any sort of mission-driven products or products with a maximum carbon footprint. That is very interesting. But we're also seeing from the data, and we track very closely consumer sentiment and their behaviors in our core markets, is obviously the level of awareness around sustainability and the willingness to have an impact with your own consumption behavior. This is very important, but especially in a difficult economical context, there is a limit to what consumers are ready to do, where it really increase at the end of the day the cost of the product or the service that they have to pay for. So you have to find the right balance.
That balance is something I find quite fascinating, in that you have a brand like you mentioned, Who Gives a Crap, which from the outsider's perspective, my assumption would be that the sustainability that they're doing is absolutely brilliant, but the reason most people log on to the website and buy is convenience, funky looking packaging, being part of the Who Gives a Crap crew, rather than necessarily, I need more sustainable toilet paper, where's the best option? So it feels like we're almost more encouraging the customers to make better decisions as an industry than we are using sustainability as the hook to bring the customers in.
Absolutely. It goes together. And Oatly is the same. You have to have, to build a very engaging and relatable brand, invest in developing genuine and authentic relationship and communication with your consumer. And then obviously they are drawn to the additional sustainability part of the value proposition, right? But if it's just about environment and you don't deliver on the rest of the experience, I think this is much harder, for sure.
I think it's something which people like myself need to get better at explaining in order to help retailers large and small make that shift. Because I think we've got a role as an industry to help consumers get more savvy with these difficult decisions around the sustainability space. And like you were saying, to make the whole e-commerce ecosystem more sustainable. For those listening, on that sustainability front, where would you recommend them to start attacking it in their business?
Yeah, because it can feel a bit intimidating, right? When you don't know where to start. And I think our belief here at Verlinvest is it's around incremental good. Some businesses are completely mission driven from the start. We give the crap. We mentioned the environmental mission. They've also said it very clear from day one that 50% of their profits, 50%, and not 1%, they will donate to build toilets, in developing countries. And so you have that, twofold, super powerful, mission. But not all businesses have been created like this. I think it's really about incremental impact, right? And just, breaking down your entire supply chain, your entire logistics. Maybe I start there because this is usually where you have, the biggest, low-hanging fruits, right? And just, build plans to improve every day, right? That's where we spend time with our companies.
E-commerce Master Plan is supported by some of the greatest companies in the e-commerce sector. Here's a reminder of who they are.
cash is king. Are you tying up your capital with goods that take months to arrive? Wave goodbye to cash flow headaches with Trade. They pay your supplier invoices up front and you pay Trade back up to 4 months later. This lets you free up capital to invest in your growth. No dilution, no complicated repayment scheme, just a transparent flat fee for each financed invoice. Learn more or apply to see if Trade can help your business grow at trade.io/masterplan. Now, Trade is spelled TREYD, so that's TREYD.io/masterplan. We've all reached peak frustration at one point or another with Google Ads. You've created a beautiful campaign with all the right keywords and targeting and ads that are the perfect fit for your perfect customer. But the sales just aren't coming in, and you just can't work out which Google Ads lever you should pull to fix it. Sound familiar? Well, thanks to my friends over at specialist PPC agency Digital Gearbox, you don't have to struggle any longer. Digital Gearbox take the hassle out of navigating the murky, dark arts waters of Google Ads, and right now they're offering a free, in-depth account audit for anyone who might be stuck in a rut with their campaigns. To improve your Google Ads performance, please book your free audit today at digitalgearbox.co.uk/masterplan.
It's time for the top tips round.
Okay, Raph, you shared loads of great advice already, but it's now time for us to move into the top tips round, which is going to give me and our listeners some really quick ideas for taking our business to the next level. So, Raph, are you ready for these?
Please.
Okay, let's start with the book top tip. If everyone listening to this podcast agreed to take Friday off and read a book to make their business better, which book would you recommend?
Well, look, since we all e-commerce lovers here, one good recommendation that I have is a book called Working Backwards. It was written by Colin Breyer, with someone of very high quality that I have a chance to work with. And he used to be, among many things, chief of staff of Jeff Bezos in the early days of Amazon. And this book is really around Amazon and how, as the company grew, they structured their processes and often really from the ground up and very different from what everyone else was doing. And so what I like about this book, it's very practical. It's just how to improve your hiring process, the way you run a weekly management meeting, the way you make decisions. And so it's really a good read for everyone, I find.
Excellent. I've not come across that one before, so I'm going to have to go and put it on my wish list.
Good book.
Top recommendation. Okay. The traffic top tip. Which marketing method do you either prize above all others or think doesn't get the press it deserves?
It's a good question. So, again, I think because of our background, all about building amazing, lasting brands and also being quite long-term, we really value retention, right? The ability to create best-in-class stickiness with your existing customer base. And so a lot of the time that we spend with our portfolio companies, obviously you need to be quite aggressive when it comes to, being, present in front of new customers and helping them, convert. But often spending a lot of time on retention provides the highest ROI, right? And one thing that is often disregarded, but personalized emails to your existing, customer base are proving to be very efficient when they're well done.
Yeah, when they're well done, everybody.
Correct. You don't want to spam your customers every day with, irrelevant content either. Also, I think we really believe in the power of content, right? And so investing in proprietary content, whether, UGC or company-led, is often a very good way, to drive organic acquisitions, to drive SEO, and to drive, differentiation versus multiple similar players out there.
The marketing method that just keeps on giving. Investment in content. Okay, the tool top tip. Maybe a collaboration tool, a social media plugin, a phone app, or just a way of working. Is there a cool little tool you use that makes you and your team more efficient from day to day?
I won't be super original here. I think we are we're using the same Slack and WhatsApp as everyone else. I think we can probably do a better job, internally at maybe using some really cool solutions like Notion. Yeah, no, look, it's going to sound a bit old school, but at the end of the day, actually, shutting down laptops and smartphones and, being in the room and 100% focused in the moment, even like for 15 minutes with your team, this is usually when you actually drive the best decisions and the most quality discussions.
I'm always up for an old school offline tip in this part of the show, always. It's so easy just to get totally focused in on Slack or, whatever other tools you're using and forget to actually talk to people. Okay, the last one, the big one, the growth top tip. If you met someone today who's focused on growing their e-commerce business from 100 orders per month to 1,000, what would be your number one tip for them?
I have actually a fairly easy answer. I think you need to focus on making every single experience perfect. I think some of the shortcomings or drawbacks of the last couple of years and this whole like COVID exuberance is just that growth at all costs mindset and kind of missing the point on the fundamentals. When you have a business of that size, like making sure that every consumer touch point is memorable, that is the way to success, because it's going to drive word of mouth, it's going to drive referrals, it's going to drive repeats, and that's the way to go.
Yeah, it's the easy stuff, she says, doing inverted commas, but it's not easy to do it well.
Yeah, but at least, so that's where you first focus on perfect operations, a checkout experience that works, on-time delivery, maybe some personalized note at some point throughout the experience. But if for whatever reason the experience is not perfect on the consumer side, and obviously it happens, and the more orders you have, the more it happens, then you need to really invest time, efforts, and passion into customer service. I think, especially in e-commerce, we discussed Chewy, which has been a fantastic success story. I think one thing that they understood so early on is the power of customer service, and to some extent, the fairly limited costs associated with it. If you have your own staff able to obviously address all type of post-transaction issues, but also serve as a sounding board and some sort of advisory upper in the decision funnel to advise on brands, to advise on products, and become, the stuff that was kind of missing in e-commerce when you think about going to an offline stores, right? When you can have a salesperson helping you. And I think the platforms we've been able to replicate that online, have been able to create immense brand love and equity.
Excellent. Well, look, Raph, before we say goodbye, could you please let the listeners know where they can find you and your business on the web and social media, please?
Sure. So you can go and check out our website, I think verlinvest.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, send me a note, and I will try to do my best to reply as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's always the caveat, isn't it? Bear with me, people. Okay, Raph, thank you so much for being on the e-commerce master plan podcast. It has been a real treat getting the high-level view of what's going on in the industry and what's working right now from someone such as yourself. So we really appreciate you sparing the time to come on.
Thank you, Chloe.
It's always a real pleasure to get to catch up with someone who has a different view on our industry, and a different view because they're playing on such a different level, the guys doing the big private equity, the big venture capital. So really pleased Raph could spare the time to come and talk to us, and loving those big themes he was talking about. A lot of what we talk about already in this podcast, I'm feeling a little bit smug about that, to be honest, but also, just some real clarity in there. It really is all about that brand and that experience piece at the moment. Invest time, energy and passion in customer service. If you want to find out a bit more about them, it's verlinvest.com, which is VERLINVEST. And you can get our notes from today's episode and those top tips, plus links to what we've mentioned, by heading over to ecommercemasterplan.com/podcast, or use the direct to episode links. That's just ecmp.info/episode number, and that will take you straight to the correct page. Once you get to the website, you can also add yourself to our email list so you don't miss out on any of the other things I share to help you improve your business. If you liked this episode and you liked that kind of big customer experience focus that was going through what Raph was telling us about, then why not have a listen to our sister show, Keep Optimizing, where we've just done a whole month of different takes on how to improve your customer experience. You can find all of those by heading over to keepopt.com/CX, or just find the Keep Optimizing podcast on your podcast player of choice and you'll quite quickly find those episodes, because I think that will help you put some practical pieces around those big picture things we've been talking about today. Thank you so much for tuning into this and every episode of the e-commerce master plan podcast. I bring you a new one of these interviews every week because I want to inspire and help e-commerce business owners like you to succeed and thrive with your businesses, including progressing along the path to sustainability. So if you know someone this show can help, tell them to listen to the e-commerce master plan podcast. I hope you have an excellent week and do not forget ever to keep optimizing.
Thank you for listening to the e-commerce master plan podcast. Find out more at ecommercemasterplan.com/podcast.
If you're marketing an e-commerce brand, you already know that data changes everything. More data means more power. And if your email or SMS tools can't handle all that data, they're probably holding you back. That's where Klaviyo comes in. Its top-notch personalization and segmentation help you send the right message at the right time, guided by unlimited real-time data from your online store and tech stack. Request a demo at klaviyo.com/masterplan. That's KLAVIYO.com/masterplan.